I'd like to learn Mirz Hashem together in Parshat Chukat. A few psukim that at face value don't really seem to be teaching us tremendous amount of information. One could almost wonder what is it doing here in the Chumash. But as with everything, when we just scratch the surface, again we see so many of the Yesodos of Yiddishkeit, so many fundamental ideas are hidden here. Parshat Chukat is begins with the Paraduma, and then we have, that's really the transition. Now we fast forward 40 years, the story of Meriva, the story of Aaron dying, and right after Aaron dies, what the Chumash tells us, the entire assembly saw that Aaron had perished. They wept for Aaron 30 days, the entire house of Israel, and now we come to Parakaf Aleph, the first two psukim. Let's learn together. First three psukim. The Canaanite king of Arad, who dwelled in the south, heard that Israel had come by the route of the spies, in Hebrew, Derech Ha'atarim, and he warred against Israel and took a captive from it. Israel made a vow to Hashem and said, "If he will deliver this people from my hand, I will consecrate their cities." Hashem heard the voice of Israel. He delivered the Canaanite, and it consecrated them and their cities, and it named the place Hormah. And then it talks about how they journeyed from there, and then we have the story of complaining against the man and the water, and the Nachash Nechoshet, the fiery serpents, and the travails of Klal Yisrael continue. What's going on here? Who was the king of the Canaanite? Who was this captive? What was the prayer of Klal Yisrael? Why is it important to know that they consecrated everything above? What's the meaning behind this story? So let's begin with understanding Rashi, and then we will Mirz Hashem base our shir on the way Rashi, based on the Medrash, approaches this section. First, we note that Aaron had the Adnei Kavod, the clouds of glory, in his merit, and therefore, if the clouds of glory when Aaron died are taken away, so therefore Klal Yisrael become much more vulnerable for attack. So seeing this and assuming that Israel was now vulnerable, continuing in source 2, one of the Canaanite kings launched a foray against them. Yoshev Banegev, this Canaanite king dwelt in the south. The south was the habitat of Amalek. But the Torah identifies this king as a Canaanite. The Medrash explains that the attacker was indeed from Amalek, but he wanted to prevent the Jews from identifying this people in their prayers for God's assistance. So he ordered his prayers to use the Canaanite language. Confused because the enemy wore the uniform of Amalek and spoke the language of Canaan, the Jews prayed for help against this nation, and they prevailed. So this is very interesting. It's really Amalek who's coming to attack. They're coming to attack wearing Amalek clothes, but speaking the language of Canaan. And obviously we need to understand, why is Amalek coming to attack now? Why is it that Amalek is dafka using Canaan as the language to speak? And further, why are they only switching their language and not their clothes? It would make much more sense to be switching everything in its entirety. Derech HaTarim, by the route of the spies, Israel approached the land from the south, the same route used by the ill-fated spies who had been sent by Moshe 39 years before. Now, obviously, if the Chumash is going to tell us that they went Derech HaTarim, the ways of the spies, we must be learning a lesson. Why is this detail important? This we also need to understand. Mirz Hashem. And Shevi, a captive, they took only one captive, a female slave, whom the Jews had captured in the previous skirmish with the Canaanites. The sages assumed that the captive could not have been an Israelite because it's inconceivable, says the Ramban, that the Jews could have suffered losses while led by Moshe at this August stage of their history. And then they declared that everything, which indeed was, will be consecrated and dedicated for the booty for the tabernacle, which indeed it was. Again, we need to understand why, specifically in this war, did they say everything should be consecrated for the temple? What was the significance of this statement, and why specifically in this war? So obviously when we ask these questions, we understand that we're dealing with Amalek. Amalek we've met many times in the past. Amalek has agendas, and Amalek also has a tremendous amount to teach us. So I'd like to take a look at this section with the help of HaKadosh Baruch Hu on almost 5 different levels. Some will be similar, to try to glean for ourselves what's going on here. And again, the primary questions we're going to ask ourselves, and some levels will answer all of them, some of them. Why is Amalek coming now? Why are they dressing up like the Canaanites? And 2, 3, why are they only switching their language and not their clothes? And 4, which is our overall question, my friends, what are we to learn from this? How is this section, mamish, a directive for our lives every single moment, every single day? So let's begin. The Drash David, Rav David Hofstadter, in source 5. He says, one of our questions, why specifically to the Canaan? And we also have to understand, he adds,